So I got a really great segue in that talking about open source, and this is a really technical crowd, which is good because I'm a technical writer, and I'd like to ask you technical people for some help, specifically if you're involved in an open source project significantly. The thing is, I would like more technical writers to contribute to open source documentation, but it's not that easy, and so I need your help. I do program on occasion, and so I understand kind of the open source model values code above other things. But I'm also a writer, and it's what I do best, and it's how I'd like to contribute. And I've seen, like when I've tried to get involved in a significant way, or when I've seen other writers attempt this, there's like recurring patterns of discouragement when writers try to get involved in open source. And so when offered documentation work, writers often get responses like, the source is self-documenting. Even though the use cases, the prerequisites, the community expectations are not. Or, oh, that code's being rewritten. When, you know, it could be better today. Or at least the documentation could be. Or we've got high standards. When there are like 1 million comma splices, and there are known documentation errors in the bug tracker. Or like the single most common thing is just silence. Even though like the same 4 undocumented support questions hit the mailing list like day in, day out. And so it doesn't have to be this way. And users and maintainers are wasting a lot of effort, and my commit history on GitHub is like really pathetic. And we could all have it a lot better. And so I'm asking you to help me to help you. And it's really great that I get to like preach to the choir here and be like, you know, the documentation could always be better. It's not perfect. And I think technical writers are prime candidates to do that work. But it's hard to get writers involved when they can't actually get involved. And I know you have other priorities, and I know it's easy to ignore things that are not code, because nobody ever complains as loudly about the docs as they do about the bugs. But you might be missing a good opportunity by turning away English majors like me. To really illustrate the point, like I studied technical communication in college, and I had a lot of project-based coursework, and a lot of the time I got to pick the projects, and it was never ever open source. Like not me, not anybody I knew, and it was like despite my best efforts. And in a more welcoming environment, like could have gotten 100 hours of work out of me in a semester if just like somebody had been excited about it. And so I think we can start a virtuous cycle of getting writers involved, which will bring life to a project and get writers involved and so on and so forth. And I've got some ideas that will fit the kind of time and resources you have available. The kind of the basic level is to talk to a writer. You can solicit contributions or just like figure out how best you can work together. Figuring out a process that works for you. There's probably a technical writer in this room right now who would be happy to talk to you. Kind of intermediate level is to organize some actual concrete work. I think a doc sprint is like a really great way to start. You can accomplish a lot in a day or an hour. There's like a lot of like little things you might not have noticed that you can knock out real quick. And kind of the advanced level is to mentor a writer. You can work with a writer to hook them into your project or into open source generally. Particularly with younger writers, I think you can get to them before they get all enterprisey and start jabbering about DITA and XML and all this stuff. And I really have big dreams about this in particular, about kind of encouraging this practice throughout the open source world. I'd love to see like a Summer of Docs type program. But I think with your help, we can have better living through documentation. And I'm happy to help you, and if you have any questions about making nice with tech writers, please come talk to me or tweet at me or send me an email. Thank you.
Is Carly, who comes here all the way from Australia, is that correct? Awesome.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I am the technical writer at Campaign Monitor, which is an Australian-based company, web-based app for delivering beautifully designed HTML email, and plain text email, I should say as well, and getting it delivered to the inbox without breaking. So Campaign Monitor, check that out. But having come over here for this conference, the flight over here, it's only 12 hours, but I don't sleep very well on planes, and I was very, very jet lagged when I got here. And kind of wandering around, the first stop was in LA to visit my brother, and I've had a lot of problem going to the bathroom since I got here. And I'm not talking in terms of, actually passing things in the bathroom, but in terms of, do we have fans, Don Norman fans here, the design of everyday things? Yeah, okay. So I would call these Norman door issues that I've been having, where things are just a little bit different in another country. So in Australia, we have on a toilet door like a vacancy sign or a not vacant. And so far, I haven't seen that yet. There's, apart from, pushing on a door or looking under to see if there's feet, there's this, and some places in Australia, we don't have the vacant or not vacant sign, but the door will be open if there is nobody in there. It seems there's a lot of places here where the door is shut and there's nobody in there. So there's been that. There's been issues with the toilet flushing automatically for you. Sometimes that works, and then other times I get up and I'm standing there waving and trying to find a button to do it manually. And paper towels, spitting them out. Sometimes you wave your hand in front, sometimes you turn the dial on the side. Anyway, I want to blame this on jet lag, but I could actually just blame it on the people who design these things because it's not very well done. And so a little quote from the design of everyday things, Don says, "Far too many items in the world are designed with no understanding or even care for how we will use them." And I put it to you that far too many user guides have the exact same issues. So without being, a lot of people are concerned, as it's been mentioned by quite a few of the speakers here today, I'm not a great writer. I don't know how to write in a grammatically perfect way. But I just want to give 2 quick tips that I think can be applied to write better user guides. And one of them is getting in the heads of your end user, I guess, to work out what sort of playing field they're on initially. What do they already know? What don't they know? What could you help them to kickstart not only the one task that they're trying to accomplish, but where have they come from? Have they got any clue about how to set up that thing you've got to do before you get to the other thing, which is going to be step 1 of your instructional documentation? And one way that I do that, I mean, there's many ways you can. There's interviewing people and stuff that does take a lot of time, but at Campaign Monitor, we use a little system with our failed searches for our the help section of our website, where each failed search term then links through to our support tickets. So I can read actually what that person's problem with in relation to that key phrase or key word. And from that, I get a really good sense of like, oh, right, okay, this person has no clue how to design, like not touch code in their life, versus someone who's way in there and is having a problem with something else. And I kind of pinch their phraseology from their support emails and use that in my help documents so that I'm speaking the language that they're thinking. And obviously that's difficult to do because everyone is thinking about it differently, but I find that really helps me a lot. And the other one is, actually something that Matthew Butterick mentioned, reader attention. Many, many ways that you can accomplish this and, write better to get your readers to pay attention. But a favourite of mine is the old writing for web. I think a lot of people tend to ignore that. Just these crazy long paragraphs. There's bullet point lists are fantastic. Use them, but use them in the right way. When to use bold, like not going crazy with italicizing text and boldface text. So choosing where and how to space things out so they can be read far more easily by the user. And I think the best way to do that, because there are so many ways you can do it, is to write yourself a style guide and stick to that. So even if you're not a great writer, look up some points. There's so much help online. Get yourself a style guide and keep it pasted up next to your computer and follow it. And that's all. Thanks.
What you're going to talk about?
I'm just stepping down as secretary of the X.org Foundation. I've worked for many years on the X Windows system and thought you all might be interested today to hear a little bit about a virtual book sprint that we did about 1.5 years ago trying to develop documentation for the X Windows system. This is a lightning talk with lightning slides, so you'll have to excuse me if I sort of speed through it as best we can here. The X Window system is one of the largest and oldest pieces of open source software out there. It is also one of the ones with the very smallest developer base. Part of the reason for that is that the developer base for X is incredibly intimidating, and X development's really hard. And so, we really needed to work on that problem. And so, very, very briefly, about 2 years ago, I decided to go ahead and address this horrible problem based on experiences I'd had with the Google Summer of Code book sprints, which produced documentation for the Google Summer of Code program. I got excited about doing book sprints and said, let's do one for X.org. Well, unfortunately, getting people together is hard in X.org. We're spread all over the place, as everybody is. There's very few of us, and so the pool's small. And so in an attempt to get the size of the participating population together, I said, let's do it virtual. We can do it virtual. It'll work somehow. So we picked 2 days that everybody agreed they could make. By everybody, I mean 5, 6 people thought they could be there, which in the size of the X.org developer base is actually a huge, huge turnout, except we didn't get that turnout. So it turned out to be me and 2 other people for 2 days, along with an occasional person who bombed in and wrote a page or 2. The tools we used were really pretty simple. We were having people use Gabi, a distributed text editor, to do Markdown for, actually, they were writing in a mix of HTML and Markdown and whatever. I was mostly editing. My job was to sort of glue all this together into something that vaguely looked like a book. So 2 people really wrote about 40 small pages of very, very nice developer documentation of a kind we couldn't have before. The intent all along was to use Sigil, a really, really nice open source ebook editor, to produce EPUB, and from that to be able to produce Mobi and the other formats, so that this thing really would be a true ebook, not just some web pages. So the experience was really interesting. We learned some lessons, and the first one is the obvious, have enough people, right? 2 people writing a book over 2 days is, pretty tall order, and I'm really, really amazed by the amount of really high quality content that was produced, but wouldn't probably want to do that again. Other than those 2 people, like I say, we had some people who said they'd participate who managed to come in for an hour, 2 hours. That doesn't work very well. You really need to have the people who are going to be there. One thing I would do if I had it to do over again is to try pairing people at local sites. So the thing's virtual, but it's virtual pairs. I've found that a lot of the editing tasks work better if you're sitting in the same room with the person. There's a lot better bandwidth there. Plus, you can help keep each other on focus, on task a little bit. In the real book sprints I've participated in, pairing's a really important strategy. Our tools were okay. I'm still trying to figure out how to finish up the workflow to get this thing. We've got an EPUB. It is available for some very small definition of available, so we have a proof of concept book, but I'm really trying to figure out the last of the tool chain to make it into something that we can edit and automate on the fly. We've also had Gabi issues and stuff like that, and of course the plan was, okay, we're done with our 2-day sprint. We've got an 80% book thing. We'll turn it into 100%. I'll turn it into a 100% book thing later. Well, that was 1.5 years ago. You got to really. One of the things that we learned is that nothing will happen after the book sprint. The last thing, I guess, is a plea for help. If I'm going to, stand up here and do it, we'd love to have help, sort of getting the rest of the workflow in place and actually cleaning this up into something that's a completed book that we wouldn't be embarrassed to actually spend money to build paper copies of. And that involves, in particular, help with tools and process as much as with editing. I mean, editing help would be great, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it is digging up the other 10% of technical content that still needs to be written to finish the book, and actually getting a system in place so that it can be maintained going forwards by people who aren't Sigil gurus. So yeah, that was the experience. Like I say, I just thought people would be interested in it. If you want more information about it, or if by some chance you're willing to help, please do, find me. I'm not very hard to find, and I'd be happy to talk with you about that. Thanks.
Rick Redmond, who helped us organize this. Here you go.
Thank you. Well, I didn't exactly plan on anything to talk about, but we had a slot, and I was originally invited on here to actually give a full presentation. We had so many amazing submissions that I just didn't feel right taking up one of those important slots. But I will take one of these lightning talk slots, and I do want to say it's not easy to stand up here. So thank you to all of the speakers who have come up here, as well as the lightning speakers. And we do have more spots if you want to talk. And I swear I'm not just going to stand up here and ramble. I actually do have something to talk about. Who here, when they create documentation, create FAQs? Shame on all of you. So I must say that we actually do use FAQs in the documentation at Basho, which I pretty much run that. And we had so many FAQs, I even created my own markup language called FML. And for the FAQ markup language. So I do have a dog in this fight, but I must say we have a slightly different philosophy when it comes to FAQs. For us, they're really a placeholder for documentation that doesn't yet exist. And nothing makes me happier than the day that we are able to actually remove FAQ items because they're not really being asked. Very frequently, because if you have good comprehensive documentation, generally the documentation should explain these questions away. They shouldn't, an FAQ to me is just sort of a code smell, as we call it in the programming community, a documentation smell, you might say. And so I was thinking about why is it that FAQs are still so commonly used? And the company I work at, Basho, our CTO, Justin Sheehy, gave a talk recently where he was talking about something called cargo cult programming. Who here is familiar with the concept of cargo cult? So for those of you who aren't aware, I think it was around World War II, you had these troops that would be stationed in these Pacific Island regions, and the islanders weren't that connected with the rest of the world. And so what they would see is these planes flying in over the island and dropping cargo on the island. But they didn't have any context for understanding why that was happening. So what they did was, after all of the military left and World War II was over, people started coming back to those islands later on, and what they discovered was what the islanders were doing was trying to summon the planes back. And they tried to do it by just looking at what the military had done and copying that. So what they would do is they would make like headphones out of coconuts, and they would build these runways, and they would have guys standing there waving sticks, trying to get planes to come and drop cargo. So they call these cargo cults. And the idea of cargo cult programming, and what I'll talk about is, I actually think that the FAQs are a bit of cargo cult documentation, where you aren't necessarily even being asked these questions. I mean, who has started a document, and I see this all the time, where it's a brand new project, and like one of the first things you do is FAQ. Nobody's asked you a question yet, but apparently these are frequently asked questions because that's just what you do. I've seen other pages that have FAQs, so I'm going to copy this, and hopefully I'm assuming that they had some sort of benefit, so I'm hoping that my benefit will be the same as what this other successful project who's using it. I don't really have anything more to add other than just please stop cargo culting for documentation in any general sense, but this is just sort of one of those specific cases that I see popping up over and over and over. And if you can avoid FAQs, please do. However, if you do have to build an FAQ and you have a lot of them, then you can use FML. And that was all for mine. Oh, sorry. Well, real quick thing.